Modern Storage Unpacked. Let's go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Modern Storage Unpacked, the podcast where we make space for what matters. I'm your host, Hannah, and if you could see, I'm solo today. We're doing something a little different. Actually, last week, I got to meet with a good friend of mine, Vince, all the way from Europe. So overseas, he got to meet with me virtually, of course. He is the owner of One-to-One Consulting, has a lot of experience in the self-storage market across Europe and even into America. So I thought it'd be great advice and insight that our listeners could take a listen to. So let's jump into it.
Well, Vince, thank you so much for meeting with me across the pond as well. Again, I really appreciate it. I know there's a big time difference there, but I really am excited to see what kind of insight that you can bring to our podcast and for us over here in the US. So before we kind of start, introduce yourself a little bit, your background, kind of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, despite the time zone difference. So, my name is Vince. I've been a consultant for the Big Four out here in Europe. I also did some projects in Atlanta, and I actually lived in Texas for some time, San Antonio. Go Horns, hook 'em.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically I've been working as a consultant for the Big Four, more in a corporate setting. And after having run my own business, I wanted to focus more on smaller mom and pop stores and more operation-led businesses. So I got into the self-storage industry, and that's where my focus now at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's where I meet interesting people like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you notice the difference in the markets between, since you've been, kind of familiar with Atlanta, Texas as well, have you noticed a difference in the markets and the needs between the US and over there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, of course, scale is one of the major differences. In the US, of course, everything is bigger in Texas, but I think everything is bigger in the US altogether. I think people also dare to dream bigger, have bigger ambitions. When they set up one site or maybe several, there's immediately plans to franchise and bring it to the next level. Where I think in Europe, especially outside of the UK, people are happy to run the business and maybe not have like grand plans of like how am I gonna work on my legacy, but it's more of a focus on how can I run this store effectively, and of course also do a good job. But I do think there's a difference there, and also when it comes to innovation, I think the US is really a front runner in that sense. Maybe a little bit more sales driven also. Yeah, I do see a difference there between the US and Europe. So we do have some catching up to do.
We do. Well, I'll kind of get into it. So again, you've worked across self-storage, kind of dabbling into other areas like the security of it, aviation, Big Four consulting, like you mentioned. And as a business owner yourself, what perspective does all of that kind of give you?
I think a lot of consultants, they speak really from a theoretical point of view with a lot of fluff, and they come out with really nice ideas and plans and roadmaps. But that's not really what you need as a business owner. What you need as a business owner is results at the end of the day. You want your risks to be mitigated. You want to get more people filling up your stores. You want to be more profitable. And you want to do this at a cost that makes sense with the revenue that you're getting on the other side. So one of my mottos is a good consultant should provide advice that doesn't stay on PowerPoint. Like it should really be end to end. So if you can work together with a company to co-create a strategy, but then also be able to implement it, I think that's very strong, because very often in the translation between strategy and the actual implementation, that's where a lot of the problems arise, or it's not executed according to the ideas or analysis that you did initially. So if you can do that from end to end, I think it's much stronger. And also the implementation, the devil is often in the detail. And when you get those learnings, you can use that for the next planning and the next strategy session that you hold, so that you're even more effective as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because I do feel like that is the biggest fall off is you can have this plan, but it actually being implemented in the way that it was designed to be, or also just thinking long term, like a year from now and not just like today, that can make or break, some companies, especially smaller ones just starting off. I agree, and I appreciate that insight.
I also do think that a piece of honesty that the consultants sometimes should also practice. The other day, I had someone who came up to me and said, like, hey, how can you help me with my marketing and sales, etc. And as we continue the conversation, more and more, I was thinking, I just don't think that you would benefit from a consultant at this stage. Of course, I'm happy to have the conversations and maybe coach you a little bit, but I think that would be really punching above your weight. Like you would be spending money, but you wouldn't get the return. And I think you should also really be honest in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is your advice on somebody looking to find a trustworthy, honest consultant? Is there any things that they should look for?
Obviously, you want to have some credentials. You want to understand that person has experience in the problem that you're looking at. There should be a very strong personal connection as well, because in the end, you will be working with this person. And if you don't get along, it's not going to go well. And not only will it not be like a very fruitful collaboration, there's going to be more fighting and there's not going to be the trust that you want. I think that's one of the main things that are often overlooked, like really trusting your gut feeling as well. Because in the end, it's not really about, of course, it is about the results and about how much you need to invest in this. But it's also at the end, like, how did it make you feel? Like, do you feel trusted? Is this someone that you're okay speaking to some people in the organization? Are you okay to take a leap of faith, changing like a marketing campaign or sales campaign? If you really feel that the consultant is really on your side, you'll be more inclined to take those actions. And if you don't trust that person, it's not going to happen. And then really you'll be torching your money. And that's not something that anyone wants to do.
Absolutely. You wouldn't trust them to take risks that could lead you to a better result. Absolutely. So with that, how would you describe also the maturity of the UK and Belgium self-storage markets compared to the US? I know you kind of mentioned a little bit of it earlier, my starting question, but as far as the maturity of it goes, I know you said it's more mom and pop shops, but any other insight?
Yeah, if I would get $1 for every time I hear a sentence start with "in the US," I'll be a millionaire right now. So we're looking at how the US market is developing. I think the UK is in a much more mature state than Belgium or any other European country. So of course, in terms of maturity, you have the US, Australia, and then the UK. So everyone knows that, right? I think in Europe, people are more and more thinking about themselves, or they think more of themselves as landlords. Like, I have this piece of land, how can I capitalize on this asset that I have? Whereas in the US, I think people are more thinking more commercially and thinking more about, hey, how can I do more sales? How can I be commercially more viable? What does my customer really need? How can I help my customer in that customer journey in order to improve my revenues that way? So actually, that's something that I really found interesting with Modern Storage. I noticed that you guys offer free vans for people to use during their move. And I think this is a great example of really thinking, hey, what does my customer need? It's a stressful period. They're moving from one place to the next. Storage is a solution to create a stress-free service, and then this van actually helps greatly. As a matter of fact, I did steal that with pride because I did try to make a partnership with van hire company in Europe in order to facilitate exactly this.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think that especially when you become like, I feel like you've seen the US, the scale of self-storage, I feel like sometimes you can lose that touch of what we're even here for, like how this started. It's all about the customers, and it is a stressful time in their lives when it comes to moving. And so you take pride in trying to make sure that we kind of cut off all those friction areas for our customers, moving in with us. And I feel like that is a big piece of advice I can give to growing markets, is just to never lose that sense of touch when, the customers are the reason you have a business at the end of the day. And so going above and beyond and thinking of them in every avenue, from sign up to move in to move out, everything, whatever you can do to make that more seamless for them, it'll pay off in itself. You'll have returning clients, you'll have referrals. Word of mouth is really, really big, especially in a competitive market. You got to find some way to stand out. And if standing out is at the customer's happiness, then I feel like that's the biggest win you could have.
Absolutely. And I think, providing a stress-free customer journey is not just some fluffy consultant speak, right? Like, if you make this really part of your DNA, it can really guide you in the decisions that you make. Maybe one small example that I think very pragmatic. We wanted to improve the number of reviews that we were receiving because we were getting some reviews and good reviews, but just not a lot of volume. So what we ended up doing is we wanted to have that personal touch with the customer. So what we did is a couple of days after people had first opened their box, we would call them and really just check in to understand, hey, did everything go okay? Did you have the right size? Anything else we can help you with? And this was not only perceived very well, it was also like a really nice personal touch. And we actually learned about our customer because we thought, hey, if we do this within 3 days, then it shows that we're on top of it. But what we learned is that people were still in the middle of their move. So when we delayed it to 7 days, they were already in a little bit of a less stress-free moment when they were more open to, receive the review emails. And that's really when we saw that great uptick. So applying that really improved our business as well.
I love that as well. I think that, that 7-day mark gives them time to kind of calm down and have all their, dots teed and everything like that. And I feel like that also is a good chance for you to receive feedback on the whole process. Was there anything that we could have done differently that you were, happy with? And I feel like that's a really good way to, learn about from the customer side of things, how it is really renting the storage with your company versus just us thinking this is how, people like it. You really got to hear from the people themselves. And so I really like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And actually what was also really interesting about that is that we did also learn something about the requirements of certain customers. I think 2 or 3 actually came back to us saying like, yeah, I mean, the building is great and we really like it, but the inside the store, it was a little bit dark. So do you have any solution for that? To that end, we actually decided to give all our customers a goodie bag, which included a magnetic light.
Awesome.
This really, again, was like an opportunity to really wow our customers and to also prevent that little bit of feedback where we went, of course, from like, oh, I wish it was a little bit more light to, hey, they really thought about this before I could even mention anything about it. So
yeah, absolutely. Just like you mentioned, it's receiving feedback from customers. You can ask for that all day long, but it's what you do with it. And the fact that, you took that and you create a goodie bag for all your, tenants moving in. So that way it's never an issue for somebody else. Kind of back to your first point when you made of how we implement things. It's, yes, you can receive the feedback all day long, but what are you going to do with it? Are you just going to sit with it? Oh, it is what it is. Or are you actually going to roll with it and go the extra mile to make sure that somebody else doesn't feel that same way? And so I do appreciate that. That's a great idea, by the way. I love the goodie bag. Might steal it.
Yeah, free consulting. Please take it. And there's this really funny sense of like, I think people are a little bit afraid to speak to their customers, like people being afraid that they might actually churn. I'm not really sure that's the idea. I think as a customer, you want to know that your stuff is free and the company that you store with has your back and that they're there when you need them. Of course, you shouldn't be calling every day, right? But like every 2 or 3 months, a little bit of like, hey, we're still here. We're taking care of your belongings. Absolutely fine. And of course, there's a lot of communication at the start, move in, etc., etc. But actually during move out, that is also a key moment. This is also where one of the initiatives that we put in is very helpful. So normally what happened with a lot of move outs, people would turn in their key or whatever process you have. Some companies would ask, hey, why are you leaving? And then that's basically goodbye. One of the things that we did, we wanted to improve on that as well, because if we knew that people were leaving because it was too far away from them, or it was too expensive, or they got a better deal somewhere else, or they weren't happy with the service, not only would we like to know to improve on that service, we also have a chance now to win that person back. And even though most people, of course, leave because they don't need any storage anymore and that's it gives them a really good last experience. So it's more likely that they will come back. And there were actually a couple of win backs where people said, well, I got a good offer. And then we had the opportunity to convert them, have them stay with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's not really something I honestly would have thought about. But yeah, you get such a great experience, up front. But then when it comes to the duration of your tenancy or maybe, even moving out, there's not a lot of methods, in today's world of kind of how to keep up with that. Not just the first experience you coming in, but throughout, but then also leaving. That's a great point of just getting any feedback you can from them and what you guys could do if it was anything, to kind of save them or have them come back. So I do like that. That's a great idea. I also think that communicating with the tenants, throughout their tenancy, not that you want to blow them up by any means, but I think that's a good, thing. Just, hey, we're still here. Come by, grab a cup of coffee, chat with us. Or, even if you have people on site that are, walking around the property, going up and, saying hi, pass a bottle of water, anything you can do. That's the kind of service that we try to, provide. And I think we're same in line with that.
Right, exactly. And even when you have like new services to offer, or are you doing any upgrades to your building, it also shows that you are like a healthy company that has your back, and it again builds a little bit of trust in an industry that, let's be honest, needs that a little bit.
Like everybody can.
There are always bad actors that will target self-storage. So bad news travels fast. So anything you can do to improve your brand trust, always a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want you to help me give some advice to any operators that are either looking to kind of start in the industry or maybe grow their company. What mistakes do you see growing operators? So again, this could be just starting out, really trying to boost themselves, or they already have a facility and they're wanting to grow that more. What common mistakes do you see them typically make, and how can they avoid?
And this is really for operators who already have 1 or 2 sites and looking to grow, right?
Okay.
That's what you're looking for. I think it's really important to think about like, what's your ambition level? So are you looking to maybe stay with 1 or 2 sites, or are you really looking to expand organically to 3 or 5? Do you have investors backing you and you're looking to go from 0 to 30 in a couple of years? I think knowing what your ambition level is and where you want to go will affect your decision making a lot. So for example, one of my customers that I work for, they have this ambition of growing to 50 stores in the next 4 years.
Wow.
With a fairly small team. With that in mind, they always think about how can we do certain things in a digital way, in a very efficient way where I don't have to overload my staff. So they're way more likely to invest in tooling, digital tooling, AI, all sorts of innovative means in order to be able to harness that growth. Whereas if you are looking to do it more organically, maybe you don't need that, or maybe you can get away with maybe a bit more pragmatic tools. And this whole landscape of IT tools, of course, that has to be managed. It costs money. Maybe you don't need that at the level that you're operating in. But knowing what you require and setting yourself up for that, super important. Because if you need to transform your whole company while you're running the business, it's incredibly hard.
Sounds like it. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, 50 in 4 years. That's a lot. All the help you can get. That's all I have to say. Especially with like a small, team, like you mentioned, whatever they can do to not overload them. I like that they were thinking about that, when it comes to growth as well. So yeah, that's great insight. Thank you.
Yeah, and really a scaled approach is really also what we were looking for. So luckily they have the patience and the trust to say, okay, whenever we go live with a certain site, we need to have like a blueprint, a template of how we do this. So for the first couple of sites that we developed, we said, okay, you can take a little bit longer to think of the processes and the marketing and the sales and how to set this up in such an integral way with very, very pragmatically in Asana. So we use Asana as a task management tool, right? And we did spend a couple of extra days, weeks, months to set this up. But that investment that we made here is going to pay out in all the other expansion sites in the future, where we'll be reaping the benefits of that time and time again. Of course, we're going to learn and we're going to get best practices and we're going to update along the way, but we're already 90% there. And yeah, it just makes it possible to grow.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Now, pricing, I feel like is everything in the industry. If you're outpriced or, you're kind of losing a lot of customers that are going to other competitors and kind of underpricing yourself, you are, missing a lot of what you could be getting and underselling yourself as well. So you do want to have yourself priced accordingly. And I'm sure you know that in the area that you're in. So I have to ask, what makes a price increase strategy truly work?
Right. Well, very often, I think the strategies around pricing are fairly immature. Yet at the same time, people are not off by much, right? So normally what people would do, they think, okay, I need to fill up my store, doing a competitor analysis. Okay, hey, I see that my store is filling up. Okay, now I'm filled up. I'm going to just jack up the price until I don't get any move-ins anymore. Oh, that must be the equilibrium, right? Makes sense. That's probably how I would run it as well if I coming into the business. And these, of course, are two very important factors, occupancy and competitive pricing. However, something that you see in the airline industry is that they have way more factors that they look at. So, for example, seasonality is a really important one. That's something that you want to look at. If you know that summer period, for example, more people are moving, so you're going to get an increase in demand. Okay, maybe you want to increase your price a little bit, even though your occupancy is maybe not where you want it to be. At the same time, even though your competitors may be charging a lower amount, if you are compensating that with better amenities, better service, CCTV, maybe you have a different price rise policy. These could all be very valid reasons to have a certain price segment that you want to enter. Location is important, right? We have a competitor really close by. It's only 1 mile away. They're about 20% cheaper than us, but they're behind the train tracks and behind a big highway. So it feels a little bit less safe. It's a very small store. They're not part of like any national or regional conglomerate. So it makes sense that they're charging a little bit less, right? Like in the eyes of a customer, that makes sense. Now, of course, there's all these tools where you can have this automated, etc. But I actually vouch for having this conversation with the customer on a periodic basis. So some people do it weekly, others do it bi-weekly. I think monthly makes most sense because it is a bit of a slow-moving industry by nature, right? Like sometimes when you change the price, the effects you will only get 2 or 3 months later. So I do think you need to have that patience. And if you look at it every week, of course you monitor every week or every 2 weeks, but I don't think you should always necessarily act on it. I think you should like have a strategy, stick with it. And if it then doesn't work over 2 or 3 months, of course, then you adjust.
Yes.
And the thing is, operators are usually not off by that much. They're not off by 20 or 30%. They're usually only off by like maybe 5 to 10%. But that's really where the money leaks, right?
Yeah.
Because either you don't get the bookings or you're undercharging, and now you need to really aggressively increase the prices in order to get people up to the average. But now you're going to be seen as this very aggressive price riser, and is that something that you want?
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that you mentioned, because it is true. You really don't feel the full effects of any price changes that you implement, for like you said, 2 or 3 months, I feel like that will show you the actual results of what you have done before. Do you feel that some operators, they aren't giving the opportunity and the time to see the full effects, and they, try to switch up before that time period hits? Like maybe a month later, they're like, oh, this isn't working. We're not waiting. We're gonna go a different avenue. Do you see that a little bit in your area?
Right, yeah. I see it more and more with operators who have a smaller number of sites, because with them, I think they lack a little bit of the cash. Of course, that bigger corporations, they can sit it out for 2, 3, 4 months and then they make the decision, right? Whereas I think usually like smaller mom and pop stores, yeah, they're a bit more involved in that sense. I think that's one of them. Another one is sometimes you get a lot of bookings all in 1 month. You have no idea why, and sometimes a lot of people leave for no apparent reason. No idea. And also, let's face it, like you need to learn a little bit. So when we started doing this new pricing strategy, we were in really close contact with our sales team to understand also what were people saying, what were our customers saying. So we really have our boots on the ground. We have site managers who actually physically give the key. This is for us an opportunity to do a bit of maintenance and get some personal contact in an area of UK in this case, where the wages are a little bit lower. So we, it's financially, it also makes sense. But we use it as an opportunity also to speak to the customers. And that's when we hear, oh yeah, we did some price comparisons and you came out as a winner, or, you learn all these different things. And by being in close touch with our staff, we can make those decisions. So it's not only, we don't only look at the numbers, we also learn from the market. And after, I think 3 or 4 months, we really nailed it. Like we had the right pricing. And from that moment on, the monitoring became a lot easier. So to give you an idea, the first time we had that meeting, I think we took an hour and a half, 2 hours, because we also really wanted to understand the lay of the land.
Yes.
But nowadays, I think maybe it takes 15 to 20 minutes, and it's just a lot more effective. Like I'm quite proud to say our profit has increased by 10% over the last 4 months as a result.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Pricing, it's a tricky thing, and sometimes having some sort of tool, intelligence tool can help you in that note. And I know that you might have something to speak on that. Is it one-to-one price radar?
Exactly, yeah. So this is a tool that I actually developed together with my CTO. So in the world of AI, this actually become more and more available for smaller operators. So when you have really large operators, of course, they have their own software developers. And a few years ago, they were the only ones who had access to the talent and the cash in order to build this type of tools. Luckily, nowadays, it's a lot more available also for smaller operators to also compete in that on that level. And I think it presents a really good opportunity. So, of course, like gathering all the data is a lot easier, but also you can use now AI, and well, in this case, we built in our tool also a suggested range. That is a great starting point for a discussion on pricing. We very consciously decided not to make those price changes automatically, because what I also saw in the business is that operators would basically change their prices based on their competitor pricing. But then you're not actually setting your prices, your competitors are setting your prices.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think, is something that you want to stay away from, especially when you have customers that maybe look once or twice, or before they book, or they've booked with you before. If they see the prices fluctuate nonstop, it gives a very odd feeling, right? So if you can be more strategic, more consistent there, again, I think it builds on your brand trust. And in the end, I think it also works on your profitability. So we use it really as a tool to have these really rich conversations. Of course, if you want to automate that, you can automate it. I just strongly suggest not to do it.
I agree. It's still good to have, human eyes pressing the button or giving the okay, or kind of, seeing what they're seeing on the day-to-day front, before making those big decisions. But I think it's a great, tool, and having that, as a recommendation, and seeing, I think it's like it goes off of multiple markets, so not necessarily just your own, but the area in general. And I feel like that, like you said, helps you not lower your pricing just because your competitors are, because that's, not how you want to price yourselves. That's given the kind of the ball in their court on. If they go up, you go up. So I think that's a great tool, and congrats on that invention. So Vince, would you say that advanced pricing strategies are only realistic for more of the larger operators versus the smaller ones?
I think this was the case past, but I think with the dropping cost of digital tools, and especially AI tools, I think it's become more and more available to smaller operators. So it is creating more of a level playing field, which I think is very positive.
Yeah.
At the same time, I do think that it would help to have a second pair of eyes looking into it, right? Because a lot of people, they're so focused on their business, they're really into the weeds, which is great, right? Like knowing all the details in your business is important, knowing your customer very important. However, having that bird's eye view and having someone who's looked around in the business, but also maybe in other industries, can elevate your game as well. So I would recommend speaking to maybe even, like, it doesn't have to be a consultant, right? Like maybe even peers in an area that are not direct competitors. See what they're doing. Check out what your association does. There's a lot of learnings there, and then you can always apply it to your own business. Modern storage is very different probably from the 4 or 5 competitors you have in the area. So one part of advice that I would give to you would not apply to any of the other ones because of could be whatever reason. So I do think you need to be smart about the strategy that you're setting, and it really needs to be aligned with your company DNA and the strategy and the ambitions that you have.
I agree.
But it's more and more available.
Not a lot in this industry is a, one size fits all. I mean, we've seen it. We have locations that are very close in proximity to each other, but they're vastly different when it comes to their demand and, just the tenant behavior, their wants and needs. Like it is so different, even in such a close, couple miles from each other. And so I feel like kind of being a little bit more open to doing something different than what the person next door is doing. Because again, it's not really a one size fits all industry. I think that's great advice that you would give.
Yeah, and especially in more mature markets, right? Like in the US and in the UK, customers are spoiled for choice. Whereas in whereas in smaller countries, such as, for example, Belgium, people are willing to drive a little bit more. Also because, that's not a very developed market. They don't have 3 or 4 opportunities within a 10-minute drive.
Yeah, that is true. Very interesting. I know we talked a little bit about reviews beforehand, but I kind of want to dive a little bit into that. I know that we kind of talked a little bit about your review strategy when it came to like maybe 7 days after somebody moved in, giving them a call. What does a strong retention strategy really look like operationally, and how do you think that affects that location, that facility?
So the name of the game in the storage industry is like you want to keep people as long as possible, right? You want to keep them happy as long as possible. So having a strong retention strategy like directly impacts your revenue and profitability, of course. And really, it's your first impression, right? Same if you go on the date, you want to make a first good impression because otherwise you never get that second date. So again, I think a really useful tool here is creating like customer journeys and personas. So really think about, okay, Hannah's moving from Arkansas to New York. Okay, what are some of the things that she now needs to think about, right? Like, oh, she has plane tickets. She needs to like talk to family, whatever. Okay, what's happening with her stuff? Is she going to store it in New York? Maybe parts of it, maybe parts of it in Arkansas. Hey, how can we help her? Oh, maybe she has 3 kids. Okay, well, that's probably something that's on her mind. So maybe we can send someone to pick up her stuff from her home and then send it to Modern Storage. For just one example, right? But like all these ideas will come up when you interview your customers. Luckily, you only need like 5 to 6 customers usually to really do a thorough customer journey. I would recommend having 2 journeys, specifically one for residential customers and one for business customers. But you will find out things that you maybe wouldn't have thought of before. One of the things that we also thought of was actually to make improvements to our app in order, after the user testing. Another one that came out was calls that we do with our customers when they move in, but also when they leave. And of course, I don't have to explain why reviews are important for your digital online strategy. But think about your cost of acquisition, right? So if you want to attract a new customer, that's usually a couple of $100 or pounds or euros or whatever currency you work in. And having that person stay for 1 extra month is already worth so much more, right? And this is also something that I think you should consider when you do your price increase policy. So there are those who increase during the anniversary, throughout the year, maybe at the start of the year. And I hear stories in the association, especially in the UK, where they say, oh, well, it's great if someone leaves because they don't pay enough, you can fill that store up with someone else and they can come in a higher rate. And I'm thinking, but like, have you really created a promoter now for your business? Not really sure if that's the brand that you want to be. And at the same time, the fact that someone is in your business doesn't mean that they all get the same price increase across the board. So learning from another industry, in this case, the home alarm industry, what we did there is we had different customer segmentations where we could see, hey, these people are either high risk, medium risk, or low risk. And based on that, we would actually change our price increase percentages with certain guardrails usually.
Yes.
that can really impact your profitability effectively without creating churn issues.
Absolutely. I do like that. I do feel like people undervalue your long-term tenants. Stay with you. I have, a few that are just here for years, whether they're business or just, normal household items in there. And yes, they might have gotten the price it was a couple years ago, and there might have been a few price increases since then. And yeah, there might be a variance between what we could, rent that out as of today, but versus having it sit vacant and kind of just hoping that that right person comes along to get that specific one. I do feel like people are really missing the mark and kind of undervaluing those long-term tenants. So I do feel like that there should be some sort of pricing scale, when it comes to that seasonality as well. So I do appreciate that insight. And there's, again, like there's different avenues that you could take, like you mentioned with your alarm systems when it comes to like different, zones of like high risk, medium risk, like you can, kind of tailor it down a little bit in that sense. But I do feel like not having, again, one size fits all, in any area, but especially in this industry, will go a long way. It will open up your mind a bit. So
exactly. And I also do think that the local market plays a role here, right? Like if you're in the center of Ayers Rock, close to where you live, right? Or like in the middle of New York or London or out in the boonies. Like if you have a very small market, people will talk, and you're not going to replace your store that quickly with someone else because there's just not enough people. There's not enough customers. So to that end, one of my clients actually decided to have the third year of our price increase. We would actually not send an increase, but rather a thank you for your business. So year 1, year 2, we would increase that price. Year 3, we would say thank you for your business. We're keeping the prices level.
Love that. Yeah, that is great. When it comes to growing businesses, I think you're kind of dabbling in that and working really closely with operators who are really wanting to grow and scale. For operators that may be listening that may want that outside support, what kind of consulting work do you offer? I know we mentioned a little bit of that, but I'll give you your spiel here. Just all the consulting work that you do in total for any of those growing operators.
So I have a very strong focus on marketing and sales, but also growth and product. These are the things that I have a strong history in. At the same time, I also like to think along with the general manager or the owner. So normally how I start is with a SWOT analysis. So where you look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's kind of like a company scan. So I speak to certain people, I do my analyses, and then just having that outside view already helps to look at, hey, what are sort of things that your company needs? Hey, do you need a better Google Ads campaign strategy? Do you need to change your pricing strategy? Oh, hey, are there any opportunities for extra revenue through insurance or accessories? Hey, if we're going to do that, do we need to change our terms and conditions? So it's very wide, but at the end of the day, we're in the business of making money, not throwing money out the window. So yeah, marketing and sales is normally where a lot of the focus goes to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Is there any last, pieces of advice you'd like to give anybody, or if somebody is wanting to speak to you directly, how could they find you? Do you have like a website they can go through, or just anywhere where they can find you if they're wanting to kind of get some consulting from you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my company is called 0 to 1 Consulting. So 0-1consulting.com. You can also look me up on LinkedIn. You'll find me. Feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to have a first chat for free just to see if there's any reason to do business. And then, always happy to work with interesting, fun clients. So feel free to reach out.
But thank you so much, Vince. I personally learned a lot. I think that other people could take away from this too. I hope that, even if this helps one, operator kind of think outside the box a little bit. I feel like that our job is done, but I really appreciate you, especially the time difference. This is the end of the day for you, beginning for me, taking the time to meet with us and come on our podcast. And yeah, if there's any last words you have to say.
No, thank you so much. This was also a cool opportunity for me. So really nice to be chatting to someone in the US, which is not something that I do every day. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, Vince. Again, it was awesome to have you on, and we'll try to get your stuff tagged in here. But again, thank you so much, and hope you have a great rest of your evening, okay?
Likewise. Thank you so much, Hannah. Speak to you soon.
Well, there you guys have it. Thank you again for Vince for joining me in such a different time zone. I'm really glad that we found a way to make it work for us and have him on. Hopefully you listeners enjoyed it as well and got some insights on what the market is like over in Europe. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. We'll see you next time on Modern Storage Unpacked.
That's a wrap for this episode of Modern Storage Unpacked. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe. See you next time.